Hello, Doris here. Today I'm going to be showing you a journal that have created for the Dear Julie July Just Junk Journal Challenge. We were to create a hardcover journal, any type, size, and theme, and it was to be made totally from junk. There were certain pieces of junk items that were to be included, and I will show them as we go along. I decided to use this recipe binder that I had. It originally had a coil spine that I removed and added these rings to it. One of the junk items we were to include was a garment or linen item. I chose an apron that I had, a vintage apron, and so this check here was part of that apron. This little piece of rickrack was just loose trim that I had. We also could include 5 additional items at our choosing to put into the journal. We had to do some jewelry, like a broken piece of jewelry. We could do 5 items with that. And so one of them was this bead dangle I did here. You might not be able to see it too well, but then I have a little bowl pin hooked on here and a little charm that says Cookbook. Okay, we'll get into the journal. Another item we had to include was either a bag of some type. So for my end papers, I used a Trader Joe's grocery sack. You can see it on the front here, as well as on the back. And I put a couple pockets, a pocket on each side. And these pockets are from the apron. And here's a little pocket tag I made with part of the apron here. Just a note, this is from this actual cooking book that I'm using. Did some stenciling. That was another item that we needed to include, with some stenciled items. And I did a lot of stitching throughout the journal. And I don't know if some of you saw on Dear Julie on her Facebook channel, I posted a picture of where I actually had washed out a couple of butter wrappers and sat them on my stove to dry out. This is what I did with one of them. Made a little pocket out of it, stitched around, and then I just added a little tag. Backed it with some of the grocery bag. Another piece from the grocery bag. And we had to include a calendar, I believe. And this is part of my calendar. The other part of this tag here is from an old folder that I had. This is a book page from the book, Cookbook. And I'd stitched down the middle of it here. And that way I could add a couple recipe cards. And part of it was we could include as many envelopes as we wanted, and also if we had loose book pages. Well, I had a lot of cookbook pages from a few different sources, and a lot of these cards came in one of them. Did a little stamping here. The stamping was also part of what we had to include. This page here, this was the linen that I chose. This linen piece actually came from a scrapbook paper pack, believe it or not. And so I thought that would be a good addition. I stitched around that. Here's more stenciling on the grocery bag. And then we also could include a magazine. And since I didn't really have a magazine I felt would go with this, so I did have a vintage seed catalog. So here you can see I took an envelope, did some stamping on there, added part of the seed catalog on here. More of my calendar. And as far as the calendar, to get it to look like this, I sanded it a little bit, then I painted on some coffee, and then I just dried it in my oven. This here is just something that was in one of the cookbooks. how to operate your refrigerator. Then over on this page, one of the pages from one of the cookbooks, I made into a little pocket. There's a little tag. This journal was a lot of fun to make. We also could include 8 papers, but they had to be within the categories of like graph, ledger, or writing paper. So this is one of the papers that I had, and I just coffee dyed that. Here's from the seed catalog. Backed it onto another, I had a ripped red folder, so I knew that would work good in this journal. And a lot of these whole reinforcements are from that red folder too. This here comes from the actual cookbook that I'm using. It looks really old, but it's not. And then here's another one of the jewelry elements. It's a little bulb pin I put on here and stamped an image there. These are from an old photo album sleeve. So I did some stenciling here. This was a stencil that I had from Dollar Tree, I believe. And here's envelopes. We had to do something with 3 envelopes, so I just took 3 and put them together and took a whole stencil. This was and let me take these out. This was an entire stencil. I just laid the whole thing over it and inked it up, and then did a couple different little images on here. And when I got done, I thought, well, it looked kind of dark, so I actually went over it with a little bit of white paint and distressed it a little bit. And I really like how it turned out. So actually there is spots for 6 recipe cards. You can put one here, here, and here, of course. And you open that up, and there's places inside each envelope as well. One of the pages from the book, another page from the book. And I love making pockets, sewed pockets especially. And so this is a nice big pocket that I can put recipes in, or pages from other old cookbooks maybe that I want to save. Piece of vintage ledger paper here. This is the rest of my grocery bag. I'm just going to do something with that in the future, but I just thought I'd put it in here as a reminder. We had to use a napkin in a couple different ways, so I put it on this journaling card here. Here's some stamping, and I cut it out. The string is from my sewing machine thread. I just tripled it to put it on here. And then I had to glue these up here, because otherwise they would have just ripped right off. Just the back of the recipe card. Over here, another page from the seed catalog. Just did a stamp there. I added this little stamp. And then down here I used some washi tape. I guess you could call that one of my 5 elements that I could add. And then I just did a little stamping here with an index card. On this side, more fabric from the apron. Here I used some wallpaper that I had and make a little tag. Another spot for cards. Over here, more of the apron. And this actually has 2 spots. And these are on an old recipe index card. Over here we have a fabric flip from part of the apron. Page from the current cookbook I'm using. And vintage cookbook pages made into a pocket. I just doubled it up here for stability and part of the fabric. Here's more of those photo album cards. I just did a different type of stencil on here. This is obviously some cherries I had emptied, and you can use junk, so I stitched it right onto this paper. This paper had been part of, I had received an Etsy purchase, or something from an Etsy store. Oh, I'm all tongue-tied here. And so I just kind of folded it in half and stitched around it. Made a great spot for more recipe cards there. Did some stamping, more of the wallpaper. And this is the linen that I used. Here's that other butter wrapper. This time I kind of mimicked a library card pocket with the red folder here. Here's the napkin again with one of the book pages from the cookbooks. And then just put that paper on the back, more of the napkin and some stamping. Here, some of the linen. This is a cutout from the grocery bag, another recipe. And then some more of the old paper, that lined paper that I had that we could include. Here's some graph paper I included. Put a little trim on there from one of the books. One of the elements had to be using a policy envelope, I think it's called, something like that. And so I just flipped up the bottom, and you can actually tuck something in here. And I made a little tag with the grocery paper. And I kept this open just so I could easily, privacy envelope, that's what it's called, sorry, privacy envelope. I knew I'd get that sooner or later. And just tuck that right back in there. Next page, made a little tuck here. Another element I made with the Seed magazine catalog. Made a little folded pockets here. This idea I watched the gal from the Paper Outpost, and that's where I got this idea. Different kind of ledger paper here. One of the corner tucks of the two I made with the napkin. Nice spot to put another recipe card. This is probably my favorite part of the entire book that I've made. I had this pattern. I really wanted to incorporate it in the journal, especially since it's an apron pattern. And so I had to find a way to put it in here because it was really torn apart. So I trimmed it down, and I created what I call a vintage sewing pattern pocket. And it's more or less, I glued it onto, or used tape, double-sided tape, and I put it on red folder. And then this was the gift bag I had used. It's a red striped bag. I had a little piece of the apron here, and I just had another little, and a little applique I added. And then over here are two of those cookbook dividers, file dividers. Really old. These are like from the 40s, I believe. Included them. And this pattern is, I had to look it up, it's from 1958. And then on the other side here, I wanted to try and keep the other part together, so I stitched that again, or glued it onto the folder. Here's part of the apron pocket. Here's another one of my jewelry elements, putting it onto a big safety pin here. Made a great tuck spot there. Included an old envelope that I had. I just kind of inked the edges. Here's a wallpaper, and then more from the Seed catalog, and made it into a pocket. And then this, I took a couple of the old recipe book pages and made them into a little envelope here. So I really made myself a lot of places to put recipe cards with this journal. Here, more of the wallpaper. An image from the current book I'm using. Made it into a pocket, stitched all the way around. Here there's a, so you can put something in the top, and then here's some of my graph paper. I just inked up and stamped and made a little tag that you can put in there. Here, just a little thing I had stamped sitting on my desk, thought I'd include. Here's more calendar, another stamped image. I just fussy cut that out, stitched all the way around this to make it a pocket envelope. And then here's a recipe that came with the book. And then I made another little, just this little booklet here. And these are actual papers from the inside of this cookbook. So the cover is really deceiving because it looks fairly modern, I guess you could say, but everything in it is the person that created this, the author really made it very vintage looking inside, so very cool. Moving on. Okay, and then this here is from when we have our little brushes that we get from the dollar store, like this. This was the packaging, and so I just covered it with some writing from the inside of the cookbook. Page from the book. Again, you can see this looks so vintage. It just worked really well. Made it into another pocket. Here's another page from the book. Here's a piece of that linen that I stitched. Did a little, used an edge punch here. This is part of that another old folder I had, and I just did a little bit of little tab there, 2 parts from the apron. Here I stitched on the apron. I made like a little, kind of like if you think of a farmer carrying around a little booklet, keeping track of things. And I put my solid red washi tape on here, stitched around it. And this is the calendar I've been using. And here I made a little pocket. This is from the gift bag. Parts from the seed catalog, made a pocket. This is that green paper that came from an Etsy store. And there's a couple little spots you can put something in here. Got a couple tabs I had made, so I just threw them on. Some line paper I coffee dyed. And I just stitched this right up the center. Just a few pages in it, so it didn't need anything else. And then this I made into a pocket. Just for fun, I threw in, I had finished these dried cherries. I washed it out and just kind of threw that in there. It fit perfect, so I thought, why not? Piece of my linen there. This was just an image I had from a previous project. This came from Ideals magazine. And then on the back, another piece of linen, this carrot here. Here I made a belly band piece from the book here. Another vintage page or ledger page. And this one's cool because it actually says like it came from a general store or something, and they have apples on here, cabbage, beans, peaches. So really cool. And I folded it up so it looks like, you can't even tell that it's a pocket there, but there is a pocket. So, and then this here is from the seed catalog. This is the actual order form. So when you open this up, here's the actual form. And then what you're supposed to do is just fold it up, put in your check, and mail it off to get your seeds. And so I ended up, whoops, a little bit of something on there, glue. So I just covered this up here and put part of an old envelope on here and stitched around it all. And then this pear image is from the catalog, and then I backed it with my folder. And this also is an old folder I found when I bought a notebook full of papers in it. It had these little folders, and like someone used them for school. And here's an example of one, another one. So that worked really good for the book too. Made another pocket back here. Then towards the end, this is another part from my bag and part of the apron, the graph paper. The other part of my napkin corner tuck, recipe here. Then on the back, just another fabric pocket and a place to put a couple more recipe cards. Oops. And that is it. So you can see I had a lot of fun making this. I definitely want to add more to it. I really enjoyed the challenge. Please go check out Dear Julie Julie, both on YouTube and on Facebook. And thank you so much. Have a great day.